Hello and welcome to Brain Says Strange Things. I'm Patrick, this is my brother Jordan, and this is the podcast where we talk about horror movies. This episode we're going to do something pretty fun, kind of a behind-the-scenes episode of sorts, and discuss our favorite horror movie memories. So Jordan and I each sat down and thought about some really significant movie watching experiences we've had as adults and as children. And in talking about these movies, we'll hopefully kind of sketch our own personal histories as horror movie fans for you guys. Kind of tell you where we're coming from, and as we take a little trip down memory lane. So we hope you guys enjoy this episode of Brain Says Strange Things.
Yep. I like to call it, This Is Your Life.
Yeah. Well, all right. So I'll start things off and talk about one of my favorite horror movie memories.
Okay.
Are you
going chronologically?
I'm going to try to go chronologically. So I'm going to start out with experiences I had when I was pretty young, kind of bringing us up to the present day.
Okay.
And a lot of these memories are sort of hazy memories, and I purposely didn't really kind of do any kind of research to be like, okay, how old would I have been?
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of going like, I remember, so the first memory that I wanted to talk about, I wish I could remember the first horror movie I ever saw. That would, of course,
I tried to think of that
be an obvious, great one, but I couldn't remember.
I almost lied and said it, but I have one kind of similar to that, so we'll see.
So I couldn't tell you what the first horror movie that I ever saw was, but one of my early experiences watching horror movies was actually on television, and I think it was, I want to say a channel like AMC used to show usually marathons of the classic Universal monster movies, as I remember it, often around Halloween. And it might have just been one Halloween in particular.
No, they do that on Halloween.
Yeah, they probably still do.
I'm sure.
So this is when and I was pretty young at this time. I mean, I want to say like, God, I don't know.
10?
9, 10, something like that.
I don't even know what one you're talking about. I was just guessing.
Yeah, so...
Because that's usually when it starts to make an impression. When the brain hits
and that
record.
would probably be about right. And I was aware of them. I knew, like, Universal monster movies were, like, a thing, and I knew it was, like, the big characters, Frankenstein and Dracula.
Yeah.
And I don't... There's not one particular movie that I saw first or that stood out to me, but definitely the Frankenstein series... Creature from the Black Lagoon, even stuff like The Thing from Another World, which I'm actually not sure that's Universal. Those great old black and white, those great old black and white horror and science fiction movies. It was just really wonderful that they would show those on television and introduce a new generation to them. And I really, really took a shining to them. I didn't really... So I became a fan of them, and I always considered myself a fan of the Universal movies going forward, but it wasn't until actually fairly recently that I really started to look into those movies a little bit deeper. I'll talk about that later. So that's my first kind of early horror movie memory.
I thought you were kind of like leading towards one.
Yeah, no, there wasn't really, I couldn't really tell you one movie. I remember... I liked the Frankenstein series. I remember I really liked Creature from the Black Lagoon. I do remember watching the original The Thing from Another World. And it's funny, when I didn't write this down, but this memory is now coming to me. I know it's not a Universal movie, but...
I'm having flashbacks.
Yeah. I remember looking through the TV guide. Like, just what was up, because, like, that's what I do on Saturday. I'd just be like, okay, what's on today? And I saw that there was a movie called The Thing. And back then, I was a big fan of Marvel Comics.
I know the story.
And, you wouldn't... This was before the internet, and I was just a little kid, so I had no sense of, like... And I was like, did they at one point make a movie about The Thing, and it's going to be on TV? Like, from
Ben Grimm?
Yeah, from the Fantastic Four. So that's why I sat down to watch that movie.
Must have been a huge disappointment.
And I was disappointed that it was not Ben Grimm, but my disappointment quickly faded.
You're
that
pleasantly
it was a
surprised.
wonderful original movie, The Thing from Another World. So that's a good memory I just thought of, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of the same way. I mean, I don't think I could point to which one I'd seen first either. A lot of the time, I think it's just because I only watch parts. You didn't like sit and watch an entire movie.
Right.
I don't know. What's mine now? Is it my turn?
Yeah, go ahead. That was me. So the early Universal movies on TV.
Well, I'll try to think of like the best horror-related one. The first one that I ever thought of, and this wasn't when I was the youngest, actually. Or maybe it was. Alright, well, we talked about this a little bit as Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah.
Going to see this movie in the theaters.
Oh, this is very brave of you, opening up to our audience like this.
I might cry.
About your Jurassic Park trauma.
I might cry. No, I don't even know if I could point to specifically what it was about that scared me. I mean, I don't even know how old I was. I didn't really do the math like you either. I mean, probably too old to be scared of it.
Something in me is saying like 93, so you would have been like 11, I would have been 13.
Yeah. Still probably too old to be scared by it, but I do remember being frightened after you get home from the movie. There wasn't anything that made me jump in the movie, but I remember laying in my bed looking out my window like,
There might be a T-Rex out there.
There's like a tiny, tiny chance that there could be a dinosaur out there. And part of it was that like the kids in the movie were the same age as I was about. So I don't know. There are scenes with it's just them. There's no adults and the kids battling dinosaurs. I don't know. My brain never made that connection that they don't really exist.
But they could have. They showed that whole thing with the amber at the beginning.
It's possible.
It seemed plausible in the movie.
It's possible.
You don't know.
So the other ones, actually, I like the other Jurassic Park movies, or one of them, but I don't know. I almost feel like that's the first horror movie I'd seen. First one where I was horrified.
Had to be one of the early monster movies.
I mean, looking at it now, it's hard to even classify it as a horror movie, but I don't know. It's the first thing that's the main thing that jumped out at me.
That's a really good one. Yeah, it's interesting that you had that reaction because there's definitely, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to those first horror movies or those first monster movies that they saw when they were admittedly maybe just a little bit too young to have seen them.
Yes.
And maybe that was the case for you with Jurassic Park. But I'm glad you mentioned it because I didn't have the reaction you did. We probably saw it together, I'm sure. I vaguely remember that we did. But it was the movie definitely made an impact. This is a great movie. I remember it's just like the special effects, the CGI in that movie, it was just mind blowing at the time.
And I've always had kind of a real fear of some animals in horror movies.
Yeah, you have a thing with animals. And
I do. I just have a lot of nightmares involving animals and stuff.
It's okay, John. I admire you for opening up about this
traumatic.
You can't Jurassic Park.
You can't convince an animal not to attack you.
That's true.
You could convince Jason or somebody, possibly. You could talk him out of it. You could put on a sweater. But
yeah.
If it's like a robot or if it's
a sweater's not going to save you from a velociraptor.
No.
Yep. All right. Well, that's a good one. So Jurassic Park for you.
There's a weight off my chest.
All right. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is again not a specific movie. I mean, this could almost be like a whole episode, but
Well, we're not trying to talk about because that's one thing that I thought of when I was writing these ideas. It's like I started a list and then it started to be like, what have been my favorite movies throughout the history of my life? And I was like, I don't want to talk about that's kind of boring. I mean, I kind of do that anyway with this, but this is more of why it is.
This is a formative experience just in my growing up and becoming a horror movie fan, and that is just marathon horror movie viewings with my best friend growing up, whose name is Paul, of horror movies when I'd sleep over at his place. That is just what we do. Now, we'd watch other kind of movies too. That's one thing I really want to emphasize as we kind of go through my history as a horror movie
I remember
fan.
you guys first told me about Clerks. That's how I first
Yeah,
heard about
right.
it,
We watched all kinds of stuff. We didn't really necessarily consider ourselves to be horror fans. I'm not one of those fans who I saw a horror movie, and for me, that was it going forward. I always liked horror. I always kind of preferenced that genre, but I never really considered myself a particular horror movie fan.
Well, as a kid, it's just more shocking.
Yeah.
You learn more about films, other things interest you.
Yeah, so we watched a lot of different kinds of movies, but the horror movies were definitely our favorite. The horror movies definitely made an impact. And again, this is 11, 12, going to 13, probably all up into 14,
What's the
15.
one that you remember?
Well, our favorites were... There's a particular one I want to talk about. Kind of
okay, I was wondering if you had a general.
Yeah,
or not.
but in general, and again, I wish I could remember the first thing that we saw, but we always liked the big series. So Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, which I won't say much about because we had a big Nightmare on Elm Street Friday the 13th episode. Puppet Master, Halloween to a lesser extent, Child's Play. So we always loved the series of movies.
That's been a running theme, I feel. With you and then later me.
And one note I made is that, like, I remember this is where this is really when I learned about horror movies. It's where I remember beginning to recognize the cliches and tropes of the genre. Mm-hmm. Like, I was like, gosh, in all these movies I have a scene where a girl walks in a room, she's like, Billy, if that's you, I'm gonna kill you. You better not be trying to scare me, you guys.
And then a cat jumps out.
There'd be a cat jumping out. Yeah, I wrote a cat. There'd be a scene where they'd find all the bodies at the end. You know, we all know this, but this was the period where I was watching enough of those movies in rapid succession that I began to kind of recognize those tropes of the genre. So one of my just favorite childhood memories is just sleeping over at Paul's, watching a bunch of movies, and just having a great time. And very often those were horror movies. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was. I kind of have another one to go along with that, but
I kind of have two that are sort of related to that too. Actually,
go ahead with your.
Let's see. One I have is not necessarily about. Well, it is sort of about movies, but it's a TV show, and it was where I discovered Mystery Science Theater.
Yes, I should have. That could be and should be on my list.
Yeah.
Over at Paul's house, first time I saw it, midnight.
I didn't even think about that. You guys.
And it was a Gamera movie.
It to me. Yep.
Yep.
It just the main thing about it is that it just like for me when I was watching things on TV, I would watch little bits of it. I had like ADD or something, but this really teaches you to stick with it. And they make so many references that I kind of felt stupid that I didn't get everything. So I would sit and try to like research and find out what the hell that they're talking about, and it led to learning about movies. They make a reference to Casablanca. You don't know what it is at first, and then you later it's like a depth charge joke. It goes in your brain, and then it goes off later when you discover it. It's like in reverse almost. I'm discovering what the hell they were talking about, and then you want to go back and watch it, and I don't know. I have really fun memories of watching it with you, and like, even to this day. It's probably like one of the top TV shows.
Oh, no doubt.
And definitely, it just teaches you to kind of sit there and pay attention, and recognize all those tropes because they're just making fun of it the whole time. So, I don't.
That is a great choice. I wish I had thought of it. Mystery Science Theater 3000. And it's interesting what you say about it kind of sparking an interest in movies, because as goofy and as silly as it is a show about movies.
It's very smart.
Yeah, very intelligent and very funny. I am a huge MST fan. We should definitely do an MST episode. But yeah, I remember the first episode I saw was the movie, the Gamera movie, where he's swinging on the pole. I actually remembered it for years as a Godzilla movie, but it's a Gamera movie. And I was just I remember just laughing so hard.
It's like this has broken the Goofy meter.
Yeah.
It's like spinning around.
Just a great movie. That's a great choice. That's really good. Okay, so the other memory that I have that kind of goes along with watching the videos in Paul's basement during our sleepovers was long. I mean, it just seemed like we would take forever with this. Long hours trolling. It probably wasn't hours, but probably like a half hour. Like
more time than probably should have been
trolling the video stores, trying to find stuff for watch. And our parents would drive us there, and they'd be annoyed that we were taking so long. And we would just spend I just wanted to talk about video stores. Video stores were just like...
I had that one written down.
Yeah, they were like our...
We won't overdo it.
Yeah, they were like our movie delivery system. I mean, that's where movies came from. And of course, as many horror fans of our generation do, I have vivid memories of the box art from some of those horror movies. Mm-hmm. Some of which I don't think we ever even rented. You just kind of see it every time you went to the store. Yep. I wrote down stuff like Company of Wolves always had a really great box art. I actually didn't see it as...
I remember that one.
Yeah, I actually didn't see it until I was an adult.
I remember...
more arty movie, but a great box art. Ghoulies, of course.
What was the one with
Bleeders.
I was going to say, which is the one with the blood in it?
Yeah. So video stores, video stores are one of my fondest memories of being a horror fan and a movie fan in general. And it's sad that they're kind of dying out, but the industry is evolving, and streaming
We're
movies.
still able to watch them.
Streaming movies is a great thing. Netflix is a great thing. But I guess a little something has been lost in the demise of the golden age of the VHS. So I had to mention that. Do you want to do another one of yours?
Okay, yeah, I mean, one that's kind of related to that is another, I guess, sort of a TV show is Horror Incorporated. It was a show shown on midnight, like a local cable thing, sort of like a Svengoolie, back in Minnesota. And they would show pretty much the same movies, but it started at like midnight or something, and it went till 2 or something,
so I was
something
in
like
bed.
that. Yeah, you were fast asleep, but actually this was after you were gone. And like me and a friend would sit there and watch them, and then after that, Scream Theater came on, and they had even worse, like more exploitative movies. And I remember like every weekend being up till like 3 or 4 in the morning watching these things. So that's one that always stuck with me too. It just kind of, I don't even know what these movies were. I remember there's one where there's lizards, again with the animals, and lizards like crawling in people's skins. And like, I don't remember what that movie was, but
I remember watching it.
I'll probably see it again at some point when I come across it. But I do remember that, and there's, I don't know, I love those like late night movies.
Well, that's a memory that you have that I'm jealous of. At that time, that's when I was moved out. I was in college. I was like getting into different kinds of movies, and it wouldn't be until later that I would.
And you were fast asleep too.
Yeah, well, I would be asleep by that time. Did those shows have horror movie hosts? Were they hosted by?
Horror Incorporated did it. It was a guy. I actually have an autographed picture of him.
You should have brought it to show everyone.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Put
I'd
it on
have
the
to
website.
find it. But, that one did. He was a guy dressed like Dracula. He was really kind of a creep. Not in that way. Like, I have a feeling this guy was.
So
like every town has a guy that walks around in a Superman costume.
Wow. No, every town doesn't have that, Jordan.
Well,
like St. Cloud, Minnesota had that.
Something like that.
There's the local crazy. You thought he was kind of.
Yes, I thought he was kind of like that. And Scream Theater didn't. Scream Theater just like started, and then it just showed. I don't know, very like more intense ones. The Horror Incorporated showed like Public Domain, Black and White, Frankenstein, and all that stuff. And that's how I came across it. I don't remember really watching on an AMC, but I kind of sat through those, and Scream Theater kind of ramped it up a little bit.
Nice.
So maybe that kind of started to get more into that at that point.
Well, that's a great memory, and took me a little bit longer to kind of realize the brilliance of those kind of hosted horror movie shows, which now I love, and I will talk about that later too. One thing I forgot to write down though, did you mention or did you think of Joe Bob Briggs? Did you want to talk about him at all?
That's on my list there.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we can talk about Joe Bob a little bit later.
I feel like I'm just like talking about my influences and
stuff. No, this is good. This is exactly good.
I'll say like how I first discovered.
This is what we wanted it to be. All right. Well, for the next one, I'm just going to mention.
What made you think of that though?
What made me think of Joe Bob?
Yeah.
Well, because he's a horror movie host.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't really even make the connection.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about Joe Bob Briggs,
as well.
because I feel like we've thrown it out there now.
All right. So he's my favorite film critic. Not a lot of people know about him. He doesn't do a lot now, but he was an old horror movie host, and I do remember watching that.
Not a typical horror movie host.
No. It's like
he had a nationally broadcast show, syndicated show on TNT,
and
Monster Vision.
Another network too. I think he kind of got moved around a little bit. He was there at like the tail end when those creature feature hosted things started to go away.
Oh yeah.
And I do remember watching those. And I always do like the totals, drive-in totals. How many naked people were in it? How many deaths? How many beheadings? Like you would break it down like that, and it was just. I remember that, and then the thing I had written down actually is more specific. Is I bought I Spit on Your Grave, that DVD. And they have a commentary by him.
Yeah, it's great.
And I had remembered like the name. That's the first time that I kind of went back and revisited him, and I heard him talk about it. I was like, all right, I have to now read everything that he's ever said about movies and listen to every commentary he's done. And he's done a lot, probably like 10 or 12, but they're all really interesting. He has like a affect where he's like a country bumpkin, but he can like speak really intelligently about things, and I don't know, that's where I like to come from, I think.
Yes. Well, I think that's kind of
I'm not even explaining it well, but that's my point.
No,
I don't explain it well, but I I feel like I still know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I think that he is a perfect person to bring up. That was a great Monster Vision was a great show, and Joe Bob Briggs embodies what I think we try to do, and the kind of people who do inspire us in this podcast, in that they bring a real intelligence and critical kind of like tools to genre work and horror movies and things
Stuff that typically
things
gets
that
written
other
off.
people might dismiss. They can kind of look at it a little bit closer and find some value in it. So yeah, that's a great choice. Joe Bob's Monster Vision. It's one of those shows like you didn't really realize what you had until it wasn't there anymore. It's like I'd love to be able to watch that again.
I know, that's what made me think of it, because that's when I just like rediscovered it, and I was like in love.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna skip some because I just have a lot, and I feel like I want this to be kind of like a shorter episode. So like, but I want to mention like one movie that I watched when I was young that like traumatized me or really scared me. It didn't really traumatize me.
Jurassic Park 2.
But like I think all horror fans should have that. You know what I mean? Like you just saw it as like, oh my god, it just really freaked me out. And as many horror movies as you probably can. It's as many horror movies as Paul and I watched. I used to
Like what age?
It was like the 11, 12, 13 age. And see if you can guess. What do you think? It was. I'll tell you this. It was freaky scary rather than like, oh my god, someone's gonna kill me scary.
One I know that you talked about. This is gonna be my guess. Eraserhead.
No, I didn't see Eraserhead until much later.
Okay.
But that's a good guess. No, it's Pet Sematary, which all the way through is a freaky movie, and
That's
I think
one I've actually never seen.
it's actually
the animals.
Yeah, it's an underrated movie. It's like people don't usually talk about it in like one of the classic horror movies, but it's really
It was
good.
directed by a female too, which is
I think so. Yeah, and but what scares me in Pet Sematary is there are flashbacks to the mother when she was a child, and the mother. See, and this is me just going off memories. The mother was, as a little girl, was put in charge of her older sister who was wasting away from some horrible disease. The sister's name was Rachel. And they would do these flashbacks to the little girl having to take care of her invalid sister Rachel, who looked just like a living skeleton, who was like essentially starving to death, and eventually she choked to death, and the girl was finally free of her. And it was really like sick and twisted, but the images of the sister starving and just the idea of taking care of this invalid sibling that nobody knows about, none of the neighbors knew she was up there. It's just like, I'm getting a little chills right now talking about it. So it's like, for some reason, of all the horror movies I watched, that moment in particular was...
It's like Norman Bates' mother.
It was, but she was still alive. It was really freaky. So that great movie all around, Pet Sematary. But Rachel in that movie just, really gave me the heebie-jeebies. So I did not... I loved it. I loved feeling that. I was like, that's powerful filmmaking. So that's one that I wanted to mention. All right, what else do you got?
All right, well, let me do a fun one.
All right.
Remember when we would go to the Mall of America, and you go to the Warner Brothers store?
Yes.
And you'd always wait to because this was like before internet trailers and stuff when watching them. Do you remember that they would always play the new trailer for the new Batman movie?
God, yes.
Like you go there, we'd go there probably like once every few months, I guess.
Yes.
Probably longer than that. And every time you go in there, you're like, now they're playing some other new Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
movie.
So the Mall of America in Minnesota, we.
I don't even know if that store's still there.
We would take periodic trips around that. They had a Warner Brothers store. Warner Brothers had a big TV playing in the store, and they'd be previewing their upcoming stuff. And every once in a while, you'd see the preview for the upcoming Batman film. And this was the original cycle of Batman films that started with Michael Keaton.
Yep.
I remember that. I love that. That was so exciting.
Now, I have a lot to say about it, but I do like that's when I was like a kid and got caught up in all the hype. Like, what's the new symbol going to look like? Or who are the actors?
And that's what the internet is all about now. That's what movies are all about. It's all about hype. And the teaser trailer was released online, and 2.5 years before the movie's going to come out. And they've announced that they've started casting. But pre-internet and when you're a little kid, you just do not have access to that information.
You had to walk 10 miles up and down hills to the Warner Brothers
but
store to see Batman.
Didn't, and I know this is Batman and not horror, but like...
Well, yeah, it always ended up being disappointing when we saw the movie, but...
Well, not always. Not until Batman and Robin for me. In retrospect, maybe some of those weren't so great. But yeah, like, I literally don't think I would know who the villain was going to be until you would see that trailer in the Warner Brothers store.
And then in between time, you'd always be like thinking like, oh, this actor would be good as this guy.
Oh yeah, I remember
you always make up your own movie in your
There
head.
were rumors of Howard Stern as the Scarecrow at one point. I always thought that John Goodman as King Tut, personally, I thought would have been great.
That'd be odd.
All right, we're getting off on a Batman tangent here. We're going to have a superhero episode. But that is great. I do remember those Batman trailers at the Warner Brothers store. That's
and Al's Farm Toys.
Yep. Oh, so that was good. All right, what else I want to mention? Okay, I suppose I have to... Now I'm kind of going into, like, being an adult. So I have to mention my annual horror movie marathon.
All right, that's on mine, too.
Yeah. And the one thing that I specifically pointed out was our viewing of The Haunting and The Innocents back-to-back. One night several years ago.
Oh yeah,
during this marathon, and those two movies were so great. I'd never seen them before, so that evening always stands out to me. But the October horror movie marathon is something that I started. I'm sure a lot of horror fans do this really casually, maybe around like 2006, 2007. And at first it was just like watching, horror movies leading up to Halloween, maybe the week, and watching them Halloween night. And then it became like, okay, all month in October I'm going to watch horror movies. And then I think when you moved out here to Wisconsin is when it really became like official. And it was like, okay, everyone's going to pick a movie to watch on Halloween night, and Jordan's going to pick one, I'm going to pick one.
Preferably something no one's seen before.
Yeah.
But that's not always the
And
case.
leading up to that, you're going to watch as many horror movies in October as you possibly can. And the last couple of years, I personally have made the commitment to watch 31 movies in 31 days every October leading up to our Halloween.
I admire you for it, but I can't even do that.
Well, I'm glad that the Halloween, the horror movie marathon made your list too, because it's definitely something I look forward to all year.
I didn't even have a specific one in mind. I just, those in general. There was another marathon that I thought of too that's kind of funny. It doesn't really have anything to do with horror. But remember we watched like all the Rambo movies on Easter for some reason?
Did we watch them on Easter?
Or no. It wasn't Rambo. What was it? It was Predator. It was Predator 1 and 2 on Easter.
Well, that's Predator. Why not?
I was like, this is like the best Easter ever.
It was pretty good.
I do love marathoning those things.
Yeah.
And as you kind of get older, it's kind of how this started too. It's you try to come up with links between these movies, like themes or something.
That is how this started. You and I would get together and have little movie marathons, and we decided we
do
might as well
this
film
anyway.
it.
So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's a good one. All right, well, let's motor on.
More?
I don't know. Do you have more? I got maybe a couple.
Oh, I do have one kind of main
more
one. One big one that I have is when I remember IFC in the Film Channel. I say remember like it's not around anymore, but I don't really watch IFC anymore. But there was, again, this is like watching late at night, like 1 or 2 in the morning or something, and I saw this bizarre horror movie that just like blew me away, and it was so weird. It was, and like there's no access to see what this movie is. They don't tell you what it is after it's over. It didn't have like a TV guide or I don't know.
You can't press info on your digital TV back then.
Yeah, I mean it makes it sound like it grew up in the 18th century or something, but there was one like this scene where this guy is just like,
oh, I know what you're gonna talk about.
Yeah, he's like cutting up these bodies, and it just gets more and more ridiculous, and it was insane. And he was like using their intestines as lasso. It's kind of like the end of Reanimator, but like ramped up way higher than that. Like there's gallons of blood. The whole screen is like red. And the guy, I just remember he's fighting a guy with a lawnmower.
Probably a lot of horror fans know which movie we're talking about at this point.
Yeah, I had no idea though, but I rediscovered it later. I just remember like, what the hell was that movie? There was a few years that went by, and I was like,
man, that's awesome.
I was like, I have this vague memory of this movie, and I couldn't I describe it to people.
Did that really happen? Did I really see that?
Yeah, was that a dream? I was like, I would describe it to people, and they'd be like, no, I've never really seen it, because it's not something that they show in the middle of the day. This is like probably 5% of people saw this, but I don't even know how I finally discovered it later, but it was Brain Dead. Peter Jackson's Brain Dead. which has like other titles, but that's one that I remember. And I've since seen it, and it is ridiculous, but nothing really lives up to that first seeing it and then going a long time without knowing what it is. And I finally discovered it, and I was like, yes. Like, and that's kind of, I fell in love with Peter Jackson, I think. So.
Yeah. There's something cool about, like, not having instant access to all the information about
it was kind of like a little trailer.
Yeah.
I just saw that's the very end scene, and it just goes crazy. I remember he puts like a guy on top of the lawnmower. It's upside down. And the guy's like spinning around. And I was like, "What is that?" Yeah. And then that's the end. And then it just ends. Roll credits, and then there's another movie. So I was like, "Whoa, wait, come back!"
Right.
I tried to capture it, and it was great.
You finally tracked it down. Yeah.
I did. It's a good movie.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm just going to mention two more of mine because I don't want to keep going on and on about this really briefly. So the next thing. A significant development, and this is just in the past couple of years now, so this has kind of brought me up to like the present day, is when I started watching Svengoolie on MeTV, who is a horror host who's been working for years and years and years. Rich Koz is actually the second person to be Svengoolie. He inherited it from the person who started it. Had been a local Chicago show. It's now syndicated nationally on MeTV, which is how I started watching it. So just a couple years ago, I just kind of missed the hosted horror movies of like Joe Bob Briggs and so I started watching Svengoolie on a regular basis, and I really love it. He's a classic horror movie host. He does corny jokes in between the films. He is able to show a lot of the classic Universal horror movies, which I love, and it's really through watching Svengoolie that I've come to really know those movies to an extent that I didn't before, you know. So I know like the difference between House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula, and like, you know, I know who Jack Pierce is, and I know who directed the movies, and that's really all because of Svengoolie. He really kind of sparked an interest not just in those movies, but in like classic horror fandom in general, which led to Scary Monsters magazine, which led me to websites like Terror Beyond the Daves, which Dave Fuentes runs. And to wanting to just kind of consider myself more of a horror fan specifically than just a movie fan. So it's the highlight of my week watching Svengoolie on Saturday night. I just absolutely love the classic hosted horror movie show, and I think it's such a treasure that Svengoolie is still doing it in the classic style. So
he's probably one of the only ones that's
he is. He's kind of like, you know, carrying the torch for a proud tradition. So, yeah, Svengoolie's definitely been really significant in my development as a horror fan, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, right on. All right, I have one more that I want to mention. Do you have any more to? Do you have?
Go ahead. I'm gonna see what I.
All right. Well, I'll mention
anything that sticks out.
My last one is a particular viewing of a particular film, and this one is one that definitely set me down a very particular path. That is when I had a bad night at work one night, and I decided to treat myself, and I bought an expensive Blu-ray that I really wanted to buy for a long time, couldn't quite justify it. And it was the Criterion edition of Godzilla, the original Godzilla on Blu-ray. And I came home and I watched it, and I remember this is the night that the Hunger Games movie premiered, because a lot of people I knew were out seeing the Hunger Games, but I stayed home and I watched Godzilla. And
good choice.
I'd seen the movie before. I'd seen Godzilla movies before. I'd always kind of liked Godzilla, but I'd not really been
I had chosen it as like the original Gojira.
Yeah,
I had chosen that in one of the marathons.
Yeah, but I never really like watched those movies a lot. Like I'd seen a few of them. I'd always thought like, yeah, Godzilla's cool, but for some reason, when I watched it on Blu-ray, and especially with all the special features and David Callett's excellent commentary on the Criterion edition, they have both the American and the original in that pack. It's just like, it was like I saw it for the first time. And after that night, it was like I was reborn.
Off to the races.
And I was like a hardcore like kaiju fan after that. And it's just like, I don't know what happened. Like most people like really fell in love with those movies as kids. But
I watched them all as a
for
kid.
Me as an adult, it was just like, yeah, like I always thought they were kind of funny, but I just got so into them. And like there's like 3 Godzilla movies, and I rented like every Godzilla movie after that, like in order, and watched them. And I was reading all about them, learning about all the filmmakers, Ishiro Honda, Eiji Tsuburaya.
Oh, yes.
Then I went back and watched like other Honda Tsuburaya films from Toho. Then of course I watched the Gamera movies, and it has
gave
not.
you my Toho box set.
Yeah. Jordan had some.
Here,
I was
take
like,
it.
You have King Kong Escapes. Can I have that? Can I have King Kong Escapes?
Like, take it. Get
Yeah,
away.
it's just like, and honestly, it has not ended to this day. I mean, and this was just a couple years ago, but I have to limit myself to like watching one kaiju movie a week because I just always want to watch them. So that's like kind of where I'm at right now. I'm like so in love with like the giant monster genre and Godzilla. I got my new issue of G-Fan in the mail today. It's just great. It's all good. So definitely
Quite the memory that continues. So.
Yep, it's the memory that continues on. My obsession with Godzilla, but it's great. So
cool.
All right, what you have any other
I didn't really actually have anything that stood out.
Thoughts or any? Final
I've kind
memories?
of a lot of little things, I think. But,
Okay, well, anything you want to mention for sure?
Well, on that theme, I'm going to talk about the remake of Godzilla.
The 1998.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I have that written down as the first bad movie that I've ever seen.
Okay.
Because I just have one specific memory about that is, you'd always, like, at school, you'd be like, oh, I'm going to go see that movie tomorrow. Or, I think there were even times when I faked sick at school or like, called in, like, had parents write a note the day after, and you went to go see a movie instead. I remember going to see that one because I was really excited. Like I was really.
Oh yeah, it was a big deal. It was exciting.
And again,
it was the people who did
ones,
Independence Day.
It was really
like,
hyped.
It was, yeah.
Huge.
They didn't show what the monster looked like for a long time.
And I remember when you walk in, they give you like this little movie ticket that has like a big picture of Godzilla. It was like this, like whatever collector's item thing.
Cool.
And I remember, like, I had it with me the whole time, and I'm watching the movie, and at the very end, I remember walking out of the theater and, like, putting it in the garbage. I was like, that's it. Because before, I think I kind of, like, went in with peer pressure, and people were like, how was the movie? And I'd be like, it was all right, it was good, but that was just like, no, I paid whatever it would have been at that time, like $7 to see it, and I hated it. So
that was like
to be totally honest.
That was like when I first saw The Phantom Menace. It's like you were so hyped; it was such a big deal. You were kind of like in denial at first, and then after a while, you're like, "Yeah, it sucked. It really sucked."
Yeah, you just have to be honest. So sorry, Godzilla, but I like the other Godzilla movies, but that's one.
So that was your first
kind of
vivid
memories of putting that thing in the garbage, like
that
consciously.
That was your first kind of big disappointment.
I said sayonara.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, there are many other wonderful Godzilla movies, and maybe a new wonderful Godzilla movie coming in 2014. You know, they're working on a new American Godzilla, so they've got another chance to get it right. So hopefully they will. So I don't know. I think that's a good note to end our trip down memory lane on. Or
I think so.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed listening to our rambling on about our childhood memories, and hopefully a lot of you could relate to what we were talking about. If so, let us know in the comments or let us know about your own horror movie memories. We also want to mention a really exciting announcement. You can now like Brain Says Strange Things on Facebook. So if you are on Facebook, you can find Brain Says Strange Things. We have an official page, and you can like us, and we are going to be posting previews of upcoming episodes of Brain Says Strange Things.
We're still in beta mode.
Yeah, but we'll post all kinds of like horror news and horror links, and it's going to be
these videos.
It's going to be really just a fun way to kind of keep in touch with you guys, and so we hope you will check out Brain Says Strange Things on Facebook. We would really appreciate it.
Just like it.
Just like us. We just want someone to like us.
I want to be liked.
So anyway, but that is all for now. Until then, we'll see you on Facebook, and we will be back really soon with a new episode of Brain Says Strange Things. Ooh, I screwed that up. You know the name of the show.
Just read it. It's written right up there.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.